Alright, we got a nice snowy one this morning. This is Jesse here with Finding My Wings. I want to talk about a subject that's pretty personal and direct to me. Bought my car just before the winter, and I've been driving it all winters. And I believe that you can drive a sports car, manual car, rear-wheel drive car all winter, reliably as a daily driver. Of course, this year is a little bit different. This year, I'm working from home fully, so it hasn't really been a full daily driver, but it's the same situation that I would advise to everybody else. That's how I got the car through last year. How this car's made it with almost zero rust on it. All these years with 300,000 kilometers on it, almost zero rust. Winter driven it every year. Pretty major kilometers every winter as well, so it's not light. Let's talk about what makes a good experience owning a sports car or any car in the winter. And I'll take you through the biggest aspects that I think can help you better live with a car during this awesome winter. So first off, storage. I was actually in a multi-unit with just a parking lot before this, and it wasn't great. The car had to live outside for the first year that I owned it. We had some crappy neighbors and some other things. So it was not a great experience for me. But as you can see, this year we have a garage. It's not insulated really. It's not heated. I can bring a little space heater out if I want it, but that's about it. So the garage to me is definitely an amazing thing to be able to have. I think there's other options than having a garage. A garage really isn't necessary, but it definitely protects your car to just a whole nother level. There's nothing that's getting in here. The temperature inside, also outside, it's about -12. Inside it's -5, so it keeps the car not quite as cold as it would have fully outside. But I will talk about the other options that I think are awesome possibilities if you don't have a garage, to keep a car that you truly care about out from the elements, and keep driving it reliably when it's -12 outside, -5 today, or a lot lower than that potentially. So we got the car warmed up now. As you can see, we got a lot of salt, we got a lot of snow on here. I feel pretty comfortable with it. I'll show you exactly why. We can listen to that nice rumble. Okay, so a few things just before we get going. Just things that I've actually really done with the car that I advise, especially with an FRS BRZ in the winter. So the first one was actually putting those fog lights on here. So yellow fog lights in the winter with that warm tone help a lot with visibility, especially when it's snowing and you just need that road visibility. We also have this throttle controller on here, so I can actually control my throttle curve a bit. So if I'm feeling that the car is too edgy, I can put it into eco mode. If I feel wanting the car more responsive, I can put it into sport mode, or just throw it into normal mode for nice predictable driving. The next piece, of course, I got WeatherTech mats. I just got them off Kijiji. Usually probably better to get them used. There's a lot in the used market. I don't think they're really worth the full price, but the ones that can go up the sides here protect your carpets quite a bit. You'll still have to do some winter prep and summer, spring prep as well to get those carpets nice and conditioned. Got a lot of salt coming in here. There'll definitely be carpet stains, but there are ways to help it out. And the last would be when I'm actually driving personally, I like to turn both our traction and our stability control completely off. If I get on the highway, I might go into just VSC sport mode. So that mode. So you can do that by just basically hitting off again, and then VSC sport. And then you can simply just hold the two buttons again to go back into full traction and stability control mode off. I like having no traction control, no stability control, just because it makes me really understand what the car is doing. It's very predictable. It does let you slide the car around a little bit, which I find quite fun, and I think it's a big piece of driving a rear-wheel drive car in the winter, is to really get a control of where your rear end is going to go. So now, I have this awesome garage this year, and I think there's other options. So when I had the car parked outside, I tried to put a full car cover on it, but just without buying a really expensive one, the ones that have like cotton inside of them and they're multi-layer. I ended up just putting really a window cover on it and rear view mirror covers. So something just like an Amazon window cover for winter So the downside to a full car cover is you really get stuff kind of stuck between the cover and the car. And so even if you do end up getting a really good car cover, it has the potential to scratch your paint. If you're ceramic coated and you put a car cover on, then you should probably consider investing in like a bit of a tent or something if you're willing to spend that much money on it. But to me, the easiest thing to do during the winter, especially having the car at work, to have to come out after work, to not want to sit there and wait forever, was to simply put a window cover on here and rearview mirror covers, which is like $20–30 on Amazon, I think, for those little kits. That brings me to really having an outdoor tent. So they almost look like a bit of a party tent. They're actually a really good option if you get one that closes in on the front as well. So you know there's a storm coming, you can throw the car in there, and you can close the flap on it, so the car doesn't really get covered in snow, it doesn't get covered in ice. I think that's a really good option for the winter. Of course, a lot more expensive than just something like a car cover or a window cover. The window cover was enough for me. I accepted the car was going to get ice on it. We do a lot of good prepping, waxing, everything on the car, so I wasn't too worried about just having to clear the car off and deal with the potential that will scratch the paint or it might tarnish the finish a bit, but there's always ways to redo that with detailing. So the next big piece here to me, whether you're in a garage or you have a window cover or a full car cover or a bit of an outdoor kind of a tent to put your car in, is really prepping the car itself. The most undeniable piece, of course, is snow tires. They don't have to be the absolute best snow tires, but you need that knobby grip. Really the trade-off that you're going to get is with cheap snow tires, you're going to get a lot more bounce, but you could have potential to get a nice thick tread, but it might not have the best lateral grip as something like a Blizzak or a high-end, high-performance winter driving tire. I actually ended up, just because of timing, availability, I ended up with a very cheap of Zeta snow tires. They're like Zeta Antarctica Ice, I think they're called technically. They're very cheap. They're probably like 50, 60 bucks a piece for the tires. They're quite crappy. I kind of regret buying those. I would have definitely put the money down for Blizzaks or a comparable or better winter tire, just after driving this car for 2 winters. But snow tires in any way make a big difference. These are 16s, so they're 16 and 205. Now, having a bit more depth to your tire is really good for the winter, so you can actually dive deep and try to get that low down traction. Generally, those thicker tires will allow you to have a thicker tread on them as well, without really increasing the profile of the tire a ton. Now, a Blizzak, I think, would be my next kind of best bet here, and what I want to try next, just from forums and everybody else's experience and some personal friends, Blizzak seems to have a lot of lateral grip in the winter, just the way that their tread is designed. I think below that, you're just going to be looking for knobby tread, silica based, and if you're really, really north, the ability to have studs, if you're allowed to run studs. We're not allowed to run studs here, but these tires do support studs. If we were doing a trip up north or something like that, we could easily throw a set of studs in. So tires are just one side of the equation. Now, I live in Canada. Canada has crap salt. We've been using the same salt since probably the 40s or the 50s, and it's absolutely crap. A lot of places will be in the same boat as me, where you just have really, really bad salt in your roads. It's going to increase corrosion, it's going to get everywhere, it's going to make your car very dirty, and you're kind of going to have to just accept that. I don't think that's a reason to not drive your car in the winter unless you have a really rare car. In BRZ FRS line, I don't think there's really any models that are that rare that I would say, like, that's worth saving, you shouldn't winter drive that. I think they're all worth driving. My old car, my Vauxhall Forenza, I do not winter drive. That's the only reason that it still exists in this country, is because it was never winter driven. So what I've done to fight that is, my dad, being a bit of an engineer himself and always trying to make his own things, kind of came up with the ultimate oil coating blend. So we DIY oil coat. Really what it takes is to make the oil coating blend itself. Ooh, she's snowy. no grip. No grip. Sorry, got off track there. It's so fun. I really hope everyone can experience this a bit for themselves. But that oil coating, for us, it had a bit of penetrating oil to get deep in on the first layer especially. It had just really, really thick kind of crude oil in it. Not crude oil, but very thick oil. It had a bit of wax in it as well, so it'll actually get in there, stick, and create a real protection layer. Something like Crown is good, but just if there's any option to ask them to make sure that they get deeper, they cover it more, they put a thicker layer on it, I would really encourage that. The other piece of it is with Crown, most often they will not go inside of your body panels. So what I've done is actually, well, what my dad has helped me do is to put a nozzle together on our actual spray gun for the oil that can go inside of little body panel crevices. So it's a really thin little nozzle that we've created, so it can go right inside of the doors. So the doors are also filled with oil a little bit. They're sprayed with oil, as well as the inside of the panels and the back in front of the car. And so we've really tried to get any metal area, especially with connections or weld points, covered in oil that might have any exposure to the elements. These DIY coatings are a really great option. The gun itself is not going to be really easily accessible for everybody, and just having all those materials, especially if you only have one car and you're only going to do it maybe a couple times in your life, it might actually be cheaper to go to something like Crown that has the experience and can actually put a guarantee behind the service they're providing. But I might also consider the idea of going to a private shop that does oil coating and looking for how do I say this, but like a fatherly figure, somebody that you can actually trust and maybe makes their oil coating themselves. Really what you're going to be looking for is a thick oil coating and somebody that's willing to apply it inside of panels and not just on the exterior or underbody of the car. Crown is really good. Just get their guarantees, ask for as much coating as you possibly can, a thicker coating if possible. DIY I think is a really cool option, but I'll make a whole video on that. At the end of the day, we're really just trying to say, take care of your car. The salt will kill it. I've seen cars on the lot in Canada that have just never had an oil coating or any protective coating that are rusty. Your car is make sure that you're changing your oil, make sure that you're just keeping up with general maintenance, make sure that your tires have enough air in them. This is a time of the year where you should really make sure that your tires are quite full. If you get used to driving on something like 30 PSI or below, I don't think that's a good thing. I think you should get used to the normal range of your tires, so usually like 29 to 36 PSI. I usually run on the higher range because I fill them up generally when it's a bit warmer, and so I will aim for that 36 PSI range, and then as it gets cooler it brings it back down and it's still in a really usable realm. Other than that, just go over your car, make sure there's not stuff stuck to it that's bad. You get a lot of stuff cruded up in your wheel wells. Take care of that, really keep an eye on it. This car being a bit lower, it'll occasionally scrape something. I don't really have too many issues with it. This is a stock height car. If we ever put coilovers on it, it's going to be something that's like half an inch or less of lowering, just to get better dampener control and better spring rates with hopefully multi-rate springs as well. But I'm already at the point where I will scrape the occasional thing on the road or the occasional speed bump. That's only happened a couple times. Again, it's stock height with about normal height tires on it. But definitely keep an eye on your height. I think that's going to be one of the biggest impacts to driving a sports car. But I want to talk more about actually driving a car in the winter. There's a lot of prep, there's a lot of care you can do. That's really up to you, what you care about and what you're willing to do. But the side of it that I think everybody should learn, enjoy, and care about is the driving aspect. So let's talk about that. Okay, so as you can see on this road, we're not going to have too many issues with winter driving, but I'm about to turn onto a road that's not quite as clear, not quite as maintained. Now this transition here, going from nice road to crappy road, is where a lot of people really underestimate what the road is going to do. So when you go from grip to no grip, it's hard to really predict how the car is going to slide. So those are the times to really use your caution. Now coming up here, we have a pretty quick, tight little corner. It's not too bad. I probably don't even really need to slow down as much. This car is awesome in the winter with just a low center of gravity. But I think one of the biggest aspects to me for winter driving is just patience. You're not in a race. You're not trying to do anything crazy. All these corners, in a car like this, I have the Torsen 2 LSD, so when I'm off of the gas, this car was really just a 2,700 pound car on 205 snow tires. So you can think of it the same as just your Corollas or your Civics or your front wheel drive cars when you're not on the throttle. You'll come up to these situations where you have snow really blowing across the road. That's where I think this car, to me, has actually been really amazing. The car itself has so much control compared to something like our Toyota Matrix. The Matrix, of course, has all of the weight above the drive tires. So when you're on the throttle, you have more traction. You inherently have more traction. I can't really argue with that. I think a front wheel drive car could be the best winter car. Conditions depending, against all-wheel drive, of course. All-wheel drive, I think, is something you should graduate into, even with winter driving, as all-wheel drive gives you a bit of false confidence. I've known some people that have SUVs or Subaru WRXs and winter drive them. They get a lot of confidence around that they have all-wheel drive, but at the end of the day, when you start sliding, all that matters is your tires on the road. So to me, just as somebody that's been quite comfortable driving in the winter, I was born up north. I've lived in a lot of winter conditions my whole life. I got used to driving this car in the winter. I actually started on somewhat crappy tires. So they're knobby, they're thick, they get me through the snow, I won't get stuck with them. But they're not the best tire. To me, that was actually a good learning experience. So when I don't have good tires, how is the car going to respond? Of course, you're opening yourself to risk at that point. You're not just opening yourself to risk, but the people around you. So if you fail to go through a corner properly or judge where it's actually going to be truly slippery, then the people around you are at risk. You could slide and hit them. In the winter, it's also a little bit harder to predict what's going to happen if you do hit somebody. Now, I would recommend, of course, starting on the best snow tires you can. But if you're really comfortable winter driving, just driving in general or with your car, I would consider maybe running a kind of a crappy tire for at least your first couple seasons just to get used to it. Like right now, I can just throw the car around however I really want. Being 16s and 205s, they have a lot of play, so the car has a little bit of lateral movement to it. That's the part I don't really like. From what I'm seeing, the lateral movement of the actual tire itself and the tire versus the road as far as grip are a lot better taken care of on a more expensive, a premium snow tire like a Blizzak or a performance snow tire of whatever brand you prefer. So once your car is equipped with kind of the right parts, you have fog lights, you have snow tires, you've oil coated your car, you've gone through, you've made sure all your fluids are good, that you have new windshield wipers on the car, good windshield wipers, and good windshield wiper fluid for the climate that you're in. Now, coming up on this corner here, there's a basic situation where even in best conditions, you could slide. Now, I'm going a little bit slow right now just because I'm filming, and look, there's a car on the side of the road here, so not worth going quickly around here. But either way, I'm still taking the inside line. Now, the inside line really has an upside and a downside. The downside to the inside line is you're hogging the other lane. That to me is really not a great way to drive in general. Like, you see that guy there was over the line a bit. It's nerve-wracking for the other drivers. You don't have as many options. You can't get close to the center line if you're in the other lane because I'm there, and that's going to risk a collision. The other side of it is if you're in the inside lane and trying to hug it close to that inside line, you will slide out into the corner. If you start at the edge of the road and you start sliding, you're immediately in the ditch. So that's something to really consider. I think, of course, sprinkling a grain of being cautious, slow, and you're not in a race really will help you with all of this, but I've definitely been in situations, especially with this car being rear-wheel drive, where I'll go through a corner and the car will slide out just a little bit. At those points, being on the inside of the corner really does help. And it'll also help you learn that line control when you're in the summer around what a good line around a corner is. It's technically the fastest, but in my opinion, it's also the safest in the winter, as long as you're not crowding other people. This situation right here, so this truck is coming at us. Normally in the summertime, I could easily pull out right now and make it. There'd be no issues, there'd be no questions about grip. But right now, I'm just gonna take a bit of extra time and wait. I know about how slippery that intersection is gonna be, and it's just not worth it. If it's even, say, 20% slippier than I think it could be, it could even just cause a moment of confusion where you're gonna pull out and potentially force that guy to slam on the brakes. And that's a truck with a potentially fully loaded trailer, so that's not somebody you want to have to adjust to you when they're coming at you in unsure conditions. Okay, another piece is gearing. So I have a 6-speed manual in this car. Driving through the gears, really you're gonna get first gear spins, second gear spins a tiny bit less, third gear keeps spinning. Going through a corner or accelerating, I really try to get up through the gears as much as possible. So the same as really economical driving. But there's kind of a theory behind driving, whether it's on the track, whether it's really bad conditions, or not with a manual. And that's really, to me, drawing a line. So drawing an apex. Now when you think about a corner and you put a line through it, that would actually be your driving line, so trying to hit that apex. To me, you can take that line and put it on a different curve for each gear that you're in. So on 6th gear, you have a nice, wide, long curve. In 3rd or 4th gear, you have a lot shorter of a curve. You have a tight curve. You have a potential for the car to turn in quickly. Of course, that could be offset by just not throttling it as much and steering out of it. Of course, the gearing doesn't fully affect it the way that I'm saying, but in the winter, I like to think of it as that arrow going through that apex line. So as I go up into 4th gear, I widen my line a bit. So as I get on the throttle, the actual response of my car moving on the road is going to be a little bit longer term. It's going to move around, it's going to be on a longer timeline to actually make a change. If I go down to like a 2nd or 3rd gear, the car is going to become very darty. So the ability to move left to right is going to be very quick and a little bit less stable. So really what I'm trying to say here is when you're hitting a corner, really be conscious of what gear you're in. If you think that your car is sliding towards the outside of the corner, sometimes I might go down. So if I'm in 5th gear and I feel like I'm sliding towards the outside and I just don't have enough control and the car is understeering a bit, I'll maybe put it down to 4th gear. And at that point, even just the shifting and coming off the clutch can help you kind of move the car back in. And then 4th gear should help you refocus on trying to hit that apex or a safe, comfortable corner on actual driving roads. So gearing does make an impact while you're actually driving the car around. Okay, so in these conditions where we're going from good to bad, there's a driver aid that a lot of cars will have, some cars won't. Simple cruise control. I don't know a lot about autopilots and auto drive features. I'm trying to stay away from that for now. Hopefully get a Cybertruck if opportunity allows one day and take my hands off the wheel finally. But cruise control is on a good amount of cars. In the winter, there's a positive and a negative to cruise control. The positive is stable control. So if I'm on, let's say, a highway, in this situation here where I'm just cruising, I can put cruise control on and know the car will just be stable. I can work on just steering it and keep my foot very close to the brake because I'm not really controlling the throttle, so I can't simply lift off if I need to slow down. And that is really the negative point of cruise control, is you're not fully in control. So even as my partner experienced the other day driving to work in a really heavy snowstorm, cruise control became a little bit of an anxiety. Getting used to driving cruise control, she had it on, hit some heavy snow, and realized that it was kind of pulling her not in the direction she wanted to, so quickly tapped the brakes, turned that cruise control off, and just started recontrolling the car between the brake and the gas, just brake and gas in an automatic car. But cruise control is something that can be really advantageous. I think it helps a ton just on a nice highway cruise. I'll put it into sport VSC mode and cruise control on if I'm on the highway. If anything happens, the car is pretty controlled at that point. I can just respond with steering. But in these situations, especially around smaller towns with not as high as speed limits and things, cruise control can definitely put you at risk of just not being in control. So outside of cruise control and gearing and car prep and just getting some time behind the wheel, there's something else. So I'm in 2nd gear right now. If I have the car, say, down below the torque dip, like right here, it's pretty controllable. It's a pretty nice, friendly, happy car. I can throw it around just as much as I need, but if I get up here, so like 45, 5,000, the car just is going everywhere. I've almost doubled my power in this range. So all of a sudden the torque band and the horsepower band becomes a big deal. So when I get on this part, of course I'm just going to try to get into the highest gear I possibly can. So I'm in 6th gear now. I have a nice long kind of apex curve that I'm controlling in 6th gear here. But as I come up over this crest and I come into the corner, I have to really be thinking about, is 6th gear even the best gear for me to be in right now? So if I have to respond quickly, of course, 200 horsepower car, we all know the 8.6 platform, not a ton of power, so 6th gear doesn't give me a ton of control there. It also might not be the perfect curve. So here it looked like 6th gear does work. I'm just taking my foot on and off of the accelerator pedal and letting it kind of coast through the corner. That Torsen 2 coming in clutch. But winter driving, I think, can really show you where the torque and the power curve in your car is. For me, in this car, it's up high. So the higher the RPM I get, the more wheel spin I'm going to predict that I'm going to have. In something like a turbocharged car, whether it's a WRX or an EcoBoost Mustang, you might actually be getting that power loss a little bit lower. So you have to be conscious of whether you're going to be trying to keep it just low, if you're really controlling when that boost is coming on, or if you're going to try to be above it. And really have the car in a higher RPM range that just allows it to sing a bit without having the full power if your turbo's really losing power in that range. So it's a cool time to really learn, investigate the torque and the power curve of your car, and really apply it to winter driving, and hopefully it makes you better on the track. Or if you're on the track and you accidentally hit leaves on the track, or bad conditions, or something unexpected, you should be a bit more aware of where your power curve, your gearing, your tires, how much the car is going to slide. It'll all factor into that precision, advanced driving technique, really just doing daily driving in the winter. No matter how good your car gets, no matter how good you get at winter driving, it's not a race. If you're going to do rally driving on a closed course. There's no reason to drive quickly on the roads above the speed limits. The biggest aspect here is if you become the best driver, if you are basically Takumi Fujiwara and you have an STI on the best snow tires known to man, and you have like 30,000 driving hours behind that car somehow, and you can predict where that car is going to go even on ice, there's one variable that we cannot control, and that is other drivers. Now, you're on YouTube. You've seen the videos of how other drivers react in situations, what the stupid things that other drivers do on a perfectly clear, sunny day. Now put that in terms of there's potentially black ice on the road. Now your car prep, your driving experience, your caution on the road, going under the speed limit, still might not be enough if the other drivers on the road do not care, if they do not practice safe driving. You're still potentially going to be at risk based on other drivers' actions. So really learning to be a defensive driver in the winter, I always make an assumption that if somebody's coming up behind me somewhat quickly at an intersection, they might slide. Whether that means I'm prepared to get out of the way if I'm keeping the car more in gear instead of taking it out of gear at lights, just in case something happens. Or if I simply move over so there's maybe a half of a lane free that somebody could move into if they're sliding. I think they're both really good options as far as giving yourself some room to breathe and not forcing other people to really have to deal with you being on the road. The other situation, of course, is corners. So I just talked about taking the inside line, going through a corner in a really safe, slow, controlled manner with proper snow tires after really learning your car and how it responds. Now the piece here is that the car in the other lane might slide into you. So every corner is really a gamble in the winter. On a nice, slow, controlled corner, sometimes it's actually more scary because people will think that they have grip, they might not slow down, and they might treat it like it was in the summer. Oftentimes corners, especially around here at a dip, will be places where moisture accumulates and can freeze, especially on roads that aren't driven too frequently. Those situations, there's not really much you can do. So what I've done is I've installed a dash cam. Dash cam is going to be your best friend, whether you're driving in the city, whether you're driving in the country. you cannot control the drivers. You cannot control every situation. So a dash cam, something that points out to the front of the car with a high resolution, and something that can capture the back of the car as well. So this car does have a back camera as well, 1080p back camera, 1440p front, which to me was the best combination. So you can get good high resolution of anything that's potentially going to happen to you, but you also do have proof if something happens to run into you behind. Okay, my very last piece of advice here is to learn your car. So I've already said it in this video, but learn your car. The biggest thing that I didn't do in my first year that I did this year, and it was actually really beneficial, was to hoon. Do not hoon on public roads. It's not worth it, as I've been trying to say. I don't want to be that buzzkill, but find a empty parking lot in the middle of the night. Try to find somewhere that you might know that there's nothing that's going to be on the actual parking lot. There's not going to be a piece of ice or a piece of metal hidden that you're going to hit, or a giant pothole. Somewhere you're familiar with, but there's nobody around, and hopefully no security cameras or enforcement of people not being on their property. This is a tricky situation. There potentially isn't going to be a great option for you to find. Usually big box stores don't really care if you go use their parking lots late at night, but they might not be the most well maintained. I personally was just in a park waiting for somebody at like 6, 7 a.m. And I found a really great time to just throw the car around, do some donuts, do some circle eights, and try to do a little bit of high-speed cornering while there was no people around. No people around is the only acceptable situation for me in that situation. There's a side of being just a good human and not putting other people at risk. There's also the side of if there are people around or if there are unpredictable conditions, you might wreck your car. You might run into somebody else. You might destroy your baby, and I do not want to destroy Kanata. That is not a situation you could ever reasonably get an insurance claim put through on. That is definitely you at fault. Now, I hope other people get better situations to really learn their car, to do some drifting. I think drifting helps a lot, but drifting is a completely different friction kind of situation. So when you're drifting, you're really working with friction. In the winter, to me, you're kind of working against friction. I'll show you just in a second here. There's a bit of a curvy road. I'll just go through it at a rate that's really comfortable for me. I won't even really talk through it much. But to me, this is like a comfortable, fun winter drive. I haven't posted in a little while. This is actually a road that I'm putting on my app that I'll talk about in later videos. I know I'm trying to do too much and I gotta do one thing well, but you'll see when it comes time. So again, coming from really good surface to unpredictable surface. So I slowed down quite a bit here. Now I'll have a bit of fun with this road, so I'm not gonna go too slow. But just know, there's people here. There's a house right here. There's people that could be potentially walking on this road. There is a woods here, so there could be animals coming out. And it's also very hard to see the lines on the road. So I was just doing something really inappropriate there. I drove over the middle divider. That's something you have to really work against in the winter. Like I said, the inside line is your best friend, but you don't want to be hogging that other lane. If somebody comes at you, the correction itself for trying to get back properly in your lane and give that other person the freedom to be in their lane could be enough to throw off the balance of your vehicle or just your simple trajectory that you might actually slide, even if it's not at a crazy speed. To really know, predict the corner that you're going to go through, visualize how you're going to go through the corner in your head is a big benefit to me. Now these are really crappy conditions, so I'm actually driving a bit under the snow. Like, see here? There's just snow on the road from people clearing their driveways and just pushing the snow under the road. If you hit one of those at even the speed limit right now, that's a pretty unsure situation. Now we've all seen that these cars can do rally driving. Even Toyota makes rally suspension for this car. I would love to try off-road rally suspension if I lived up north. But in this situation, I think I will still be going with something like an adjustable coilover just to get that full adjustment. Now coming up here, lots of people, lots of population. This is just use your judgment. Everything else in the winter, you're still just driving. You're just imagining that everything is covered in ice and everybody else is about to slide into you. Oh, how fun. Oh, how fun. But I promise it's worth it. This has been a really, really great experience to me. I've driven cars in the winter my whole life. I was actually born in a snowstorm up north, so my parents had to drive in crazy bad conditions, like very, very bad conditions, 2-3 feet of unplowed snow on the road, just to have me. So this is something very personal to me. I think doing it right can yield you being a better summer driver, potentially a better track driver, and hopefully just a more responsible driver. Ready to throw your butt out and do a bit of winter driving, but as you can see here, we got a car coming at us now. And so calm it down, stay in your lane, make it a good experience for that other person. You don't know what they're going through. Somebody loves you, somebody loves them. So be kind, be courteous, and thank you for watching Finding My Wings. I will keep getting into more videos as our weather clears up, as I have time to do things. I'll talk more about my app, I'll talk more about my other car. I really appreciate every view that I get. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and tune back. We're gonna keep doing some cool stuff here. I'm gonna get more into the experience of owning a car and not just reviewing parts. Thank you very much. I hope everybody is happy and healthy.